Massey. I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Expert Series. This webinar series brings together experts from eFolder's staff and partner community for deep dive discussions on key service and technical topics. Today's topic, eFolder backup versus Anchor backup. Today we are joined by Zach Mesel, CEO and Director of IT Services at Wooden Spoon Technologies. In just a moment, I will further introduce Zach. Before I go through the agenda, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also make copies of the slides available to those who registered for the event. With over 220 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it on your computer or by dialing in over the phone. Questions are strongly encouraged throughout. We have planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit them as we go along, and we'll try to address your questions on the fly. Today's presentation follows a logical flow from exploring technical differences between eFolder Backup and Anchor's backup feature, client scenarios for deploying each, and how to position eFolder Backup and Anchor's backup feature with clients. Now let me introduce Zach. Zach Mesel is the founder and president of Wooden Spoon Technologies, a solution provider in Santa Rosa, California. Zach earned his BS in Management Information Systems in 1988 from University of Arizona, then worked for IBM until 1995. After taking a sabbatical in Spain to get his bilingual certification in Spanish, he worked for a technical translation company in Sevilla. He returned to California just in time for the tech collapse. He and his wife, Misty, moved to Santa Rosa in 2000 and started Wooden Spoon in 2002. Zach, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, well, Zach, why don't we start things out a little bit? Can you talk a little bit more about your company and tell us how you got started as an eFolder partner?
Sure. So we're a small solution provider in Santa Rosa. We're about 50 miles north of San Francisco. I think that we're pretty typical of a lot of the smaller companies out there. The way that we got started with eFolder is that we had been using our own roll your own backup solution. It was a third-party software that we hosted on our own servers. We had a server at a colo here locally, and we used that to provide backup to our clients for a long time. Now, it was limited. It was file and folder only. They allegedly had continuous backup, which never really worked properly. And we had our own issues with providing the service, maintaining the servers, eventually having a duplicated server, a redundant server. We had one server in the colo and another in my business partner's garage, if that sounds familiar. And we knew that we needed to get away from that and do something that was more bulletproof. So I'm thinking it was probably at least 3 years ago we were looking for a replacement for that solution. And we looked at a bunch of different ones, and we found eFolder. And when we first started working with eFolder, it was primarily for file and folder backup. But we very soon realized that there was also, I think as is kind of typical, you start scratching under the surface, you start finding more features, and we realized that there was support for Shadow Protect, and that was something that we were in the process of rolling out. We had also been using a third-party BDR solution to supplement our file and folder backup, and we became very disenchanted with the third party. And no, it wasn't Zenith; it was somebody else. But we wanted to replace that, and so what we ended up figuring out was that eFolder was it was the perfect thing for us at that time, in that it allowed us to do file and folder backup, and it allowed us to use the same mechanism to back up our images, our Shadow Protect images, to the cloud, and give us the ability to spin up those images in the continuity cloud. So it was really the way that kind of came about worked out very well, and we were able to roll out eFolder pretty seamlessly to our clients, replacing both our previous file and folder backup solution as well as the BDR solution.
Great. Zach, great introduction to how we've got started doing business together. Let's kind of change gears just a bit, and let me introduce my colleague, Pierre Tapia. Pierre is the Vice President of Product at eFolder. For the past 2 years, Pierre has cultivated the product vision, team, and execution plan for the Anchor file synchronization platform. He was also a founder of Anchor. Pierre is now responsible for the entire eFolder product family, including eFolder's backup, BDR, and synchronization solutions. Pierre, thanks for joining us, and welcome.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. And hi, Zach. Thanks for joining us. Great. So I want to talk a little bit about Anchor's own built-in backup feature. It's very commonly used by partners, and a little bit of history there. When we developed the Anchor Sync technology, we initially intended it for this productivity, collaboration, the sync and share type of function. And we realized that after having spent so much time developing this byte-level revision sync technology, that we could utilize it to also back up other assets on a file system. And so we thought, why don't we expose a backup feature that essentially allows users or admins to choose the My Documents folder, the My Pictures folder, or any folder on the file system that has productivity files, Word documents, PDF files, and so on, and sync those up using the same powerful revision-based byte-level sync technology. So we did just that. We exposed in the very early versions of Anchor, we exposed the backup feature allowing both users and admins to create their own backups. And I should mention that on the user level, it is a policy-based feature, so admins can turn that off for users that they don't want to have control over backups. But if you do want to give them that added value, it is there. So Anchor is first and foremost a file sync technology. And what we do is we constantly monitor the file system for any changes. So if a file is updated, deleted, renamed, moved, you name it, we know about it. We register with the file system and we say, tell us when anything happens to these folders we're watching. And we also do a scan, a periodic scan, to make sure we didn't miss any changes. If computers come up offline or if the service was stopped, we do a scan and make sure to sync up those changes. So Anchor operates on an on-demand basis. It's very eager to sync. It will sync as soon as something happens, which is unlike most backups, which are usually scheduled. You run them once or twice a day. So Anchor is first and foremost a file sync. And as I mentioned, we offer multiple folder backups. So you can choose outside of the sync folder, which is already going to be syncing the data and has your team shares in it so you can collaborate with other users. Outside of that folder, you can choose your My Documents, My Desktop, your Pictures folder. On a file server, you can choose any number of folders that you want to sync. And you could choose those folders individually. So as the top level folder, you can choose My Documents as a separate backup from My Desktop for each machine. And as I mentioned, we do continuous real-time backups. So we are constantly monitoring for changes, and as soon as something happens, we'll sync it up, and we sync it up at the byte level. So next slide. So as you can see, this screenshot shows the backup feature exposed for the end user themselves. From their own web portal where they can see their own files and folders, there's a Backups tab that exposes this Create Backup button, which will show them all of the machines that they have the sync client registered on. And it's the same sync client that they're already using for their collaboration and sync and share technology that they expect with Anchor. But so you don't have to install a separate client, so that now they can use that same client to browse their file system. It exposes all of the different drive letters and shows all of the folders and allows them to choose which folders they would like to back up. Admins also have access to this screen. So admins can browse all of their users' machines and say, I want to back up these folders on these machines, and allow and take control over that aspect. But end users also have that capability if admins grant them that. Okay, next slide. Great, so when you browse into a machine, it exposes the drive letters and exposes the directory structure, and you can create multiple backups at once by selecting these disparate folders. So I might choose, 3 top-level folders within my C drive and let them sync up. and those will continuously sync. And another great feature is that those folders that I've backed up will also show up on my mobile devices under a backups section. So unlike many other sync and share apps that A, don't provide backups, B, we expose those backups so that if somebody needs to access their My Documents or their pictures, they can do that from their mobile device. There's a Backups tab that shows them all of the backups that they've selected. And so the backup feature really allows users to do a number of things. One, not only does it keep revision-based backups of all of their files the same way the syncing technology does, but it also allows them to restore any files that they have deleted. On top of that, with our new rollback feature, if there are any files that have been corrupted by the CryptoLocker virus or another ransomware type virus, they can roll back all of the files within their backup or their sync folder, but particularly in their backups, they can roll back all of those files to a revision nearing the date and time before the CryptoLocker virus hit or a ransomware virus hit. They can also restore these folders that they've backed up to different machines as backups. So if they have machine A synced, machine A blows up, they can install the sync client on machine B and choose to restore that same folder that's saved on the Anchor server to machine B, even if it's to a different location. So it's very handy in that sense. Next slide. And the backup, when you're navigating the backups, it's very similar to navigating the file and folders in your sync folder, at least from the web perspective. When you log on, you get to see all of the contents of that backup. You can right-click and download the file, view the revisions associated with a particular file, see all of the activity that's been surrounding it, what updates have been made, who's touched the file. You can move it from the web. You can even create shares if you'd like to. So we do still give you the powerful Anchor capabilities on top of that backup, but it's a one-way sync. And I guess that's a good distinction to make, is that when you back up a file, it syncs to the Anchor server, and it will continue to sync to the Anchor server, but it's not propagated to any other endpoints. And that's the main difference between our core sync functionality and the backup functionality. The core sync functionality, that's going to sync from desktop to mobile device, you name it. The backup functionality is going to be from one machine to the server and will not propagate down to another machine unless you do a restore. So it will continuously sync the data on that one machine, send it to the server, but it's not going to be then syncing that out to other machines. So that's the syncing across other machines is what you can get using Anchor's traditional sync and share technology or its file server enablement technology. But for the backup purposes, like most backups operate, it's going to do a one-way sync to the server and keep that copy there. And then you can access it via the web, your mobile devices, and so we expose the user interface in a very intuitive way that allows you to navigate all of your files and folders from either the web or your mobile device. And on the bottom screen, you see what the restore interface looks like. It shows you all of the machines and lets you choose a new folder that you would like to restore the initial backup to. Great. Next slide. So on the eFolder backup side of things, eFolder backup was designed from the ground up to be specifically for data backup and archiving. So it's a great solution for both remote and local backups. It can back up network locations. It can back up the local drives. And it's a very efficient backup client, and it does this automated block-level incremental backups. And because of the way that it reads files, it has VSS-aware snapshots, and it can read open files, it can easily back up things like Exchange 2003, 2007 in your SQL Server or SharePoint databases. So it's a very flexible backup engine, and it was built to do that, just that. Okay, next slide. As you can see, there's a lot of different features on the backup client itself, and they're all related to traditional backup features. So you can generate reports on the backup data. You can set your schedules from the client itself, choosing on what type of recurrent schedule you want that backup to be triggered. You can set different locations for the backup to be backed up to, not just a eFolder cloud. You can back it up to different network locations or to other machines or to other drives on the same machine. So it's very flexible, and it's more of a traditional backup client. Another key distinction with the eFolder file level backup, you can kind of see it referenced here with the passphrase discovery button, is that end users can own the encryption key with the eFolder backup client, in that we only get the encrypted data on our end. We have no knowledge of the encryption key. Whereas with Anchor, at least on our hosted platform, our SaaS platform, the encryption keys are owned by us, right? Because we have to facilitate the syncing and sharing and collaboration, and that's pretty difficult to do without having the encryption key owned by the SaaS provider. So the encryption key is owned by us. So if you're looking for the encryption owned by the end user, the eFolder backup client is going to be able to provide that functionality in a very flexible way. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned, there's very flexible scheduling and very granular controls over when the schedules are triggered. So you can say, I don't want the backup to start during business hours, or if it's still running and that backup crosses into business hours, I want to cancel the backup to avoid bandwidth usage. You can request certain things like, I want the computer to be woken up in order to back up the data if it's asleep. So there's a lot of very, very granular controls that you would expect from a powerful file and folder level backup client with file and folder level backup as its core focus. So this just exposes some of the different options that you have at the client level, including when you want to be alerted, which mail server you want to use to send those alerts, and the different actions you want to take at the beginning and the end of the backup. Okay. Next slide. So this just kind of shows some of the key differences between the Anchor backup and the eFolder backup, several of which I have alluded to, but let's look at some of the key distinctions on the bottom half of the table here. As I mentioned, the user-owned encryption key. With eFolder, you can have the encryption key owned by yourself or your end user. We have no knowledge of that on our end. You can schedule backups on the eFolder side. With Anchor, we do the continuous backup, the CDP-style backup, where we're always sending the updates as soon as we can get them to the Anchor server. eFolder does open file backups, and it can back up server applications and databases, unlike Anchor, which cannot read files that are exclusively locked, have a handle on them. The files have to be readable by us. We don't do VSS-aware syncing of files. So open file backups, great on the eFolder side. On the Anchor side, the client has to wait until the file is available. Local backups and mapped drive support. So Anchor can do backups of the file system of local drives, but the mapped drive support itself, if the ability to back up a UNC path, essentially, eFolder handles very elegantly. Anchor is building support for the ability to sync UNC paths, which is going to be available in a near-term release, actually a Q3 release. But if you're still looking for some of these other features at the UNC path level, then eFolder file level backup is going to be the way to go. For very rich monitoring alerting, if you want a concrete, this backup that was scheduled at this time has failed, or this backup that was scheduled at this time has succeeded, that's something you're going to get with the eFolder traditional file and folder level backup client. Because the Anchor backup client is continuous, there's no knowledge of an error per se at a particular point in time. Anchor does have a dashboard that shows you the sync status of each machine and tells you its health and whether an agent is stuck or not. But if you want that rich monitoring and alerting that tells you this backup of this folder has failed at this time, then eFolder file level backup is going to be the way to go. And then flexible restore options, the ability to not just back up to multiple locations, but the ability to restore to a variety of different machines and different locations is going to be provided by eFolder file level backup. And then Anchor overall is going to be great for laptops and desktops where you're dealing with a lot of productivity files, Office documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, images, media files. Anchor handles these beautifully, and it was purpose-built to make sure that collaboration around these files and the syncing and sharing of these files happens seamlessly. So it works very well on laptops and desktops. But at the server level, if you're trying to back up server applications or system files, you're going to want to use the eFolder backup. And I should kind of clarify here, Anchor does have a file server enablement feature that allows you to map folders on a file server to corresponding folders in the cloud, which allows you to basically keep your existing directory structure and just choose the folders that you want to sync, adding this very rich cloud layer to your folder structure on a file server. However, the folders that you're going to want to target with Anchor for that type of for that functionality are going to be productivity folders. So folders that users are accessing, like I said, to access these Office documents, these even CAD files, Excel files, and so on. It's not going to be server application files, database files, files that have a lot of reads and writes to them consistently, such as a database or system files. That's going to be more on the eFolder file and folder level backup side. Okay, next slide. All right, client scenarios. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Zachary.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I really, Pierre, it's really great. I think that previous slide really kind of sums up the differences really well, and it also kind of it leads into how we actually use Anchor and eFolder in real-life scenarios in the field every day. So, for example, we find that we use Anchor because we do use them both. We use Anchor and eFolder. Anchor, if the client does have simple backup requirements, for example, we've got some clients that have remote users who are in the field who aren't using database-driven applications like ACT or QuickBooks. And I'll get into that in a moment why that's important. But they're doing simple kind of file storage. They may be, some of them actually may be CAD users and whatnot, but they've got files that are on their laptops. They're not making it back into the office on a regular basis. Many of these clients, we have a BDR solution for their headquarters location, but for these remote users, we don't really want to suck that data back in over the VPN, but we want to have a way of making sure that data is consistently backed up. And Anchor works out really well for that. So the reason why I say Anchor is really good, particularly if you're not using database applications, is I've seen, but imagining other people have seen, where programs like ACT and QuickBooks, they've got a way of creating or scheduling the backups, for the program to kick out a flat file that can be backed up, but we've seen that functionality break pretty frequently. And so rather than relying upon Anchor in that situation, or the program itself to kick out the backup file and Anchor to back up that backup file, we've typically gone with eFolder in that situation. So that's one area where there's a little bit of a distinction. So, but people who are not in the central office, or there is no central office, they may even have a large amount of data, but maybe not. Sometimes we use Anchor even for clients that have less than a gigabyte of data, but it's a great solution for them because they may grow. We don't have to keep track of it. It's not a usage-based billing. They just, do what they need to do their business, and we make sure that their files are backed up as soon as they're connected to the net, and that works out really, really well. So a couple of examples of that. We've got a marketing company where everybody is distributed. There is no central office, and they're consistently sharing lots of Word documents, lots of PowerPoint presentations, lots of PDFs, and they actually use that as a way of sharing files among the executives of the company and to provide files to their clients. So that was not, I don't know if that was something that you necessarily mentioned in the comparison, Pierre, but our clients seen to really use the functionality, use Anchor to be able to share files with people outside their organization consistently. And that's just not something that eFolder is really built to do. And you can do it in a way where you can either share it publicly or you can share it with a password. And
yeah, I think that's a great point, Zach.
Yeah,
I think
the other. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Anchor was built, to have the syncing and sharing functionality at its core, and that's what it's really great at. These expiration dates on shares, password-protected shares, being able to track shares by users, sharing via the Outlook plugin, and so, while the focus of the presentation obviously isn't, necessarily the Anchor feature set, backup was a way of utilizing this great sync technology that we use and exposing it. So it's very useful for a set of scenarios, which you've done a great job of covering. And a lot of that layered functionality on the sync and share side is definitely not going to be on the eFolder backup side. But if you need that more traditional backup on the servers for open files, scheduled, then you're going to want to go with the eFolder backup client.
Exactly. So we have this, marketing company who's distributed. We have an architectural firm. Their gig obviously is big CAD files and lots of them, and they want to be able to. They've got they have one remote worker in this particular case that they share. They sync files from their headquarters location to this remote worker, and they share files out to their subcontractors or their clients. And we've got a construction company that does the same thing, and another archaeological consulting company that does very much the same thing. So we find that Anchor is it has just worked very well and very consistently for syncing even very large files between sites. I think we can go to the next slide. So eFolder, like we've already talked about, it really is more it's more robust. If you've got if you're backing up servers with open files, if you're backing up workstations with open files, some people we have some scenarios where we've got remote users using QuickBooks or ACT or other programs, line of business applications that have whether it's a SQL database or other databases on them, and eFolder is just not, Anchor is not appropriate in that situation. eFolder is super reliable for backing up those open files. And the other thing is we've been a ConnectWise shop for probably 8 years, and so integration both from especially the logging perspective is where it shines with eFolder. We've actually been able to do billing integration. I don't know if I should say this on the webinar, guys, but we've been able to do billing integration with both Anchor and with eFolder. So, but especially for the notifications, logging notifications, the integration with ConnectWise is great. So, as you might imagine, the kinds of clients that would use this would be, anybody who's got any of these clients who've got traditional networks where they've got a server and they've got open file kinds of issues or database backup issues. So we've got accounting firms and law firms, medical offices, which I want to make a special mention of here in a moment, manufacturing companies. So they're either using QuickBooks type stuff, other accounting software, other line of business software, again, or you've got a laptop in the field that's using that, a laptop or a remote user in the field who's using it. So eFolder works very well for that. And one other issue that's near and dear to my heart is we've got clients who are in the medical field and who've got HIPAA compliance issues. And at least our position to this point and is that because of the encryption key issue and the fact that with eFolder we can create our own encryption keys and we can manage them, and that absolutely prevents anybody else from being able to access that data. that in our medical environment, eFolder has been the backup of choice. That we pretty much use that exclusively, whether we're using BDR or not. But that gives us a level of confidence and gives our clients a level of confidence that they absolutely need. Anything else you guys want to chime in on that, or should we move forward?
I think we can talk.
Yes.
I mean, I think Zach, it'd be good to maybe change gears and just kind of summarize, how you're kind of positioning the solution.
Sure. And just so you know, Ted, I've lost my visibility to the. I'm still on the webinar, but I've lost my visibility to the screen. So I'm assuming that you're going to jump forward to the how to position screen and.
Yeah, we're on the first slide in the how to position section. So.
Okay, yep. Perfect. So. Really, I mean, like this says, if you've got, for us, the way that we've used it is in either a continuous backup scenario or a scenario for a remote user who doesn't necessarily need the continuous backup or the file sync per se. They're not really using it for synchronization. We actually do use Anchor in some cases just for backup. Again, if it is a situation where you want to provide the client with a big block of data that is not really metered per se, right? With eFolder, you're charged by the gigabyte, and with Anchor, it's a different pricing model, and so you've got larger blocks of storage that you can offer to clients affordably. At least that's what we have found. So we can offer our clients, up to 100 gigs of space for a very reasonable price, and we've typically been charging somewhere in the $20 a month range, provided that they don't have open file issues, or if they're willing to stay on top of their application software, making sure that it's running exporting its file backups correctly, then Anchor works really, really well. And again, it's like Pierre was saying before, it's a little bit of a kind of a set it and forget it. You don't get a whole lot of notification if things aren't right. So you have to stay on top of it a little bit if that's what your clients really, if they want that from you. But typically speaking, because we do have clients that we provide monthly support for, and we're on the hook for making sure stuff absolutely works positively. If they really need that, then we typically go with the eFolder file and backup, because we do have the more robust notifications. And depending on the data volume, it actually may end up somewhere around the same price range. With eFolder backup, we typically do a tiered pricing where we sell blocks of storage. We won't let a client do 1 gig of storage per month. So we'll typically price it somewhere in the first 10 gigs is one price. They do another 10 gigs, it's either the same, or we can do blocks of storage that way. But that makes it more profitable for us, and if they need that more robust backup, it enables us to provide it. And then, like I was saying before, one of the things that we had been doing before we had even come into contact with eFolder is we were using Shadow Protect. And the way, one of the big concerns that I had with our previous backup vendor was that it was a black box, with the third-party BDR solution. It was totally a black box. And when we use Shadow Protect and eFolder together, it allows us to use Shadow Protect like we've always used it before, but now we've got a really robust method of getting that to the sky. So what we found was by using these three products together, whether individually or all together for the same client, And it gives us a really high degree of confidence that we know what's going on and that we can tell the client what's going on. And it's not like anytime there's any little issue, we've got to contact some third party to help us troubleshoot what's going on. Anchor by itself and the eFolder file and folder backup products are super reliable, and they just don't require much in the way of tinkering. And on those rare occasions where we have needed help, a call to eFolder support or an email to eFolder support, we've been able to get those problems resolved quickly. And then with Shadow Protect, we're able to bring our own expertise to bear, our own Shadow Protect expertise to bear, to make sure that that's working right. And so it works really well in our environment to be able to offer either one of these solutions by itself or to bundle them together to provide something that's really robust to our clients in a way that we're very confident in managing and maintaining, and it creates a very, it's a compelling story for our clients, but it's also an easy story to tell because we actually believe it. It's not like it's a bunch of BS or it's some kind of marketing stuff that we've been fed by a third-party vendor that's telling us what wonderful software and what wonderful services they offer, and yet we have no ability to verify it. With eFolder, with the range of these products, we've got the experience now where we know it actually works, and so that's very confidence-inspiring for us, and I think it carries through to our clients.
Okay, great, Zach. That was great. I think at this point what we'll do is we'll change gears to Q&A. We're just a little past the half-hour mark here. There's a lot of questions that have come in, and I'm just gonna, Pierre and Zach, I'm just gonna start asking them, and then you guys just jump on them, to give your perspective, however you see fit. Okay?
You bet.
So let's see. Let me tackle this one from Daryl. So can Anchor restrict installation to specific machines? Meaning, if a user knows the credentials for Anchor, in theory, they can add Anchor to their home machine without permission. Follow-up question, is there a way to tell which machines that Anchor is installed on? This leads to the controlling the users and potential data loss. So either of you, I'm sure, can address that.
Great question. I got that one. Thanks, Ted. So Anchor can control the sync down of key company data. So at the team share level, you can decide which machines an accounting folder, an HR folder, marketing, admin, sales folder can sync down to. The user can install the sync client on pretty much any machine, but it's only going to be their personal files that will sync down. If there are team shares, team folders, or company folders that many users are collaborating on that are confidential in nature, you can say, I do not want this to sync down to any user's machines, no matter what machine they register it on. So there's that functionality. Also, from the administrative interface, you can see every single machine that Anchor has been installed on, the operating system, the status of that sync client. You can also initiate a remote wipe of the data on that machine, and you can see all of the different users that have Anchor running on one machine. So it gets very granular as to who's installed Anchor, where, and what they're doing with it. So you've got pretty much complete control in that regard.
Okay, great. There were a couple questions about preload options. So Joseph, and I think at least one other person, wants to know for Anchor, does it support preload option to take an initial backup to the cloud, or does it all need to be uploaded?
Great question. So if you're hosting your own Anchor server, there are options for getting the data close to it and doing essentially what is a seed or preload. With our SaaS environment, our hosted environment, we do not have a preload option to date, but it's more of a procedural thing. It's something we definitely plan on offering in the future. With eFolder, that is not the case. Actually, eFolder does support preloads, and they have a very secure way of getting your data sent over to the data center and loading it up. So with Anchor, currently preload is not an option, but with eFolder it is.
Yeah,
okay, great.
I can chime in that the eFolder seed process is very straightforward and reliable.
Okay, thank you. Zach, let me throw this one your way. I think Robert's going back to the discussion you were having about why you would not use Anchor for certain open file scenarios. But let me just read the question. And he says, Robert says, did I understand Zach to say that for Anchor backup to work right, the Anchor software has to kick out a backup file, or was he saying that the database app must kick out a flat file for backup?
The database. So, for example, QuickBooks or Act or whatever program would kick out a flat. Ideally, would kick out a flat file, and then Anchor could pick up the flat file. That is what I was referring to.
Right, but I guess the follow-on point there is that if that's not always a reliable exercise with certain line of business applications, and it's something you may not want to rely upon, and that's why you would go with eFolder backup in certain scenarios.
Correct. Yeah, we've seen both Act backup and QuickBooks backup stop working for a variety of different reasons. And if Anchor is your only backup of that, then if that's the only thing you're going to use to back that up, then you might want to reconsider. So that's why I say in those kinds of situations where you've got database-driven apps on remote stations, and that's either the only copy, typically the only copy of a database, then I would probably use eFolder in that scenario. If it is Act and it's being synced back to a central server, and you can deal with losing, however much data could be lost from the last time the person was online and was able to sync with the central server, then Anchor might be appropriate to do the backups of everything else but Act. So something to consider.
Okay, great. So, Zach, another question. This question comes from Scott, and he says, as an MSP, can you manage all of your customers from a central location? So maybe just talk a little bit about how you manage both of these solutions.
Sure. So their eFolder has one dashboard for file and folder and BDR, and Anchor has a different dashboard for managing Anchor. And so we can manage so basically two silos, and under each of those silos you can manage all of your clients in each of the silos. There's not a consolidated dashboard, and guys, I will leave it up to you to talk about whether you're planning a consolidated dashboard for the future.
Great.
Yeah. Great.
Maybe Pierre, maybe want to comment on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. eFolder continues to grow with the acquisition of Anchor last year and CloudFinder more recently. We absolutely plan on unifying not just the look and feel of the products and bringing everything in line, but also unifying the administrative experience. So it is a priority for us. It's not something that I can't speak to a specific date as to when that's going to happen, but we try to make it easy enough right now in each respective dashboard to manage all of your clients, and hopefully you're not having to spend too much time in either dashboard doing day-to-day management once you've gotten the solutions deployed. However, that being said, our goal is to bring everything in line and have a unified administrative experience, even if it initially starts off with one portal you log into that then directs you to these separate portals. So that there are plans in place.
Yeah, the kinds of, and I'll say that each of the portals, I think, works very well for the task it was built to do, and because you're kind of doing different things because of the nature of Anchor being both file sync and backup. The kinds of things that you would do in the Anchor dashboard, at least at this point, are very different than what you would do in the eFolder dashboard. So having them be different at this point in time is really not that big a deal. We don't find it's not like it's a gigantic inconvenience, and it's certainly not a showstopper.
Great.
And both products support PSA integration. Can you talk again about, just comment briefly on how you're using ConnectWise with these solutions?
Sure. So I want to be careful a little bit, just because eFolder has, both eFolder and Anchor have APIs to be able to talk to them. I did not develop. We actually kind of rolled our own integration with ConnectWise for a variety of different reasons, and I was not the individual who developed that. One of my business partners developed that. So I don't want to kind of go too deep into that, but the idea is we use the built-in eFolder integration for notifications. So if something goes wrong with a backup, we're getting notifications pushed through to ConnectWise. So new tickets get created in ConnectWise. And then, like I said, we have created our own integration. And I think that for eFolder there is, but I know for eFolder there is a billing integration with ConnectWise that does work reliably. We just have some kind of unique requirements, and so we decided to roll our own billing integration with eFolder. And then, guys, I'm not sure whether Anchor has an official billing integration built in yet with ConnectWise, but again, we were able to figure out a way to do that and get the user counts into our ConnectWise editions.
Yeah. So thanks, Zach. Yeah, out of the box, Anchor does support ticketing integration for ConnectWise and Autotask. But not current billing integration, not currently. Billing integration is on the roadmap for this year.
Gotcha.
Okay. Alejandro has kind of just a detailed technical question. He says, can you tell me if Anchor is capable of backing up a PST file, not from an Exchange server, but from Outlook in a local machine?
Great question. A PST file is kind of treated like a database. It's updated every time that you receive an email, you update your to-do list, and it's constantly being read from when Outlook is open. And because Outlook doesn't close very frequently on end-user machines, we don't recommend syncing PSTs with Anchor, although it'd be definitely something you could back up with eFolder.
Okay, great. There's a couple questions that have come in about a recording of today's session. The answer is yes, we have made a recording for today's session, and we'll be sending out the Windows Media file for you to download if you attended, or if you registered but attended or failed to attend, and then there will also be a copy that we will put up on eFolder's YouTube channel. Let's see here. John wants to know, do we need to join the partner program to see pricing, or how do we sign up? And let me just interject with kind of an answer there. If you're interested in either of these solutions, you can talk to one of your eFolder salespeople, and before partners sign up, we will go through the complete overview of the pricing and answer all the questions you might have. So if you're not yet an eFolder partner, we will be reaching out to you. And if you're an existing eFolder partner and you're either using Anchor or eFolder backup, but maybe not the other, then you should simply talk to your eFolder account manager, and they can help get you started. Let's see here. Let me just grab. So John, this is kind of probably one for you, Zach. Just in terms of, so John asks, is the individual client monthly backup report showing what is being backed up with details, or is it portal wide? Pretty detailed question. Hopefully there's enough context there.
Could you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, sure, John. Sorry. So is the individual client monthly backup report showing what is being backed up with details, or is it portal wide?
I'm not sure I understand the question in terms of being backed up with details or portal wide. So let me answer it this way. With eFolder, you can certainly generate a report that shows the client's data usage, and you can do that both for file and folder, and you can do that for BDR, which is key both for the client so that they understand how much data they're using, and it's also key for you so you can know how to bill it. With Anchor, we haven't really delved into so much the usage of it, because we cap, we provide them a block of storage and we cap it. Like I said, we typically provide them 100 gigs and we cap it. We haven't been reporting on that to them, although the user can certainly see that pretty easily. I believe, I'm not sure if they can see it from the Sync app on the Windows desktop, but they can certainly see it if they log into the web interface. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yep, very helpful. Thank you. So this is a very different question than kind of the past ones we've just dealt with, but Carl wants just this kind of a high-level kind of positioning and competitive question. And Carl wants to know, how does one best combat Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, cheap price per gig response?
Yeah,
so that's a jump ball.
So let me take that and just let you know how I deal with that with my clients.
Yep.
And it's relatively simple. Ultimately, it kind of comes back to control of their data. And when you look at the pricing, it actually, you can. And I'm going to take this specifically about Anchor, not about eFolder, because it sounds like we're talking about file sync here. When you look at the way that the freedom that you have to price Anchor the way you want to, and you can, I've seen people go on the low side. We're probably somewhere in the middle. I will share that we typically charge $20 a month for 100 gigs, which is, I haven't checked Dropbox in the last several months, but up until recently, that wasn't that much different from what Dropbox was charging. And we use the SaaS offering. We're not using the on-prem offering, so we're not managing our own server. So, it would be, I understand the person's question in that how do you differentiate that from what the other services are offering? And basically, what we come back to our client with is, hey, look, we can help you make sure, number one, that you're only sharing the information you want to share. If you want to wipe it, you can wipe it, and you can integrate it. This is something that we hadn't really talked about before, is we actually, and we have used this as a selling feature, is we can integrate the Anchor portal with the customer's website, because Anchor is brandable. So for example, with our international marketing company, they have a website that they typically have people go to. They have their own company website. But when it comes to downloading documents, and they have thousands of documents, they actually have, and they haven't integrated it, they haven't done an authentication integration, but basically they've got a link on their website where if you're going to find these files, you can click on a link, it takes them to the Anchor portal that's branded with our client's branding. The person logs in and they can see the file structure that they're authorized to see. So from the standpoint of control, the fact that they're getting the service directly through us, their trusted provider, and the fact they've got integration with their existing web presence, that typically, at that point, we've just not gotten any objections from our clients about it. It seems to work pretty well.
Great. And if I could just piggyback on that, I think what you said is exactly right. The ability for the trusted IT partner to manage and own the file sync experience, knowing with full knowledge of all of the threats that a consumer-grade syncing and sharing solution can bring, can really be made real to clients, explaining to them how data leakage happens and how how data can easily get in third-party hands with these sync and share solutions, how it can easily end up on devices that are unmanaged or unmonitored, and then also rolling that into a custom experience for the client so that it not only secures their brand and their IP, but it also helps build it up and develop it with things like the custom white labeling and integration with their web portals.
Okay.
Great.
So I think we're going to kind of wrap up with that answer there. Pierre and Zach, thank you. Again, what I want to remind everybody on the call today is if you're not yet an eFolder partner, one of our sales development specialists is ready to answer any additional questions you might have and get you into a one-on-one demo if that's something you'd like to see on either of these solutions, or if you are an existing eFolder partner but maybe not using Anchor or vice versa, you do have a named account manager who you should be on a first-name basis with, who you can ask to give you a deep dive and answer any additional pricing, feature, or capability questions you still might have. But Zach, thank you very much for sharing your first-hand experiences with both of these product lines.
You're very welcome.
Very much,
thanks again for having me. It's always it's a pleasure to talk about the things that are working well in my business.
Okay, great. And Pierre, thank you very much for all of the insights.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Zach.
Okay, everybody. This concludes another eFolder Expert Series webinar. Thanks a lot for joining us, and please keep an eye on your email for the follow-up content, which we'll be sending out in the next couple hours. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day. Take care.